It was January 20th, 2017, historic day in American politics as Donald J. Trump was sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. Washington, D.C. was a spectacle of grandeur, with crowds spilling across the National Mall, dignitaries mingling under the Capitol dome, and media from around the globe capturing every moment. Amidst the pomp and ceremony, one figure had been largely overlooked: Barron Trump, Donald's youngest son. At just 10 years old, Barron had largely remained out of the public eye, a quiet presence by his father's side during the campaign. But as the inaugural events unfolded, Barron would step into the spotlight in a way no one anticipated. The day began as expected. The Trump family stood together on the grandstand, facing the sea of supporters. Melania Trump, elegant in a powder blue dress, stood beside her husband, while Barron stood slightly to the side, his youthful face framed by his perfectly combed blonde hair. The boy seemed calm but focused, his hands clasped tightly in front of him as if bracing himself for the long day ahead. As the swearing-in ceremony concluded and President Trump began his inaugural address, the atmosphere shifted. Donald Trump's speech was bold and assertive, full of promises to bring change and restore American greatness. The audience erupted in applause at key moments, their cheers echoing across the mall. But amidst the energy of the speech, a few sharp-eyed reporters noticed Barron. Unlike his older siblings, who clapped and nodded in agreement, Barron seemed unusually contemplative, his gaze fixed on the horizon as though lost in thought. After the inaugural address, the Trumps moved to the Capitol Statuary Hall for the traditional luncheon with congressional leaders, Supreme Court justices, and other dignitaries. It was a room filled with power brokers and history makers, all mingling under the chandeliers. As plates were cleared and the room grew quiet for post-lunch remarks, it was President Trump who broke the silence. He began thanking his family, praising Melania for her support and acknowledging his children for their dedication. When he turned to Barron, he smiled. "And to my youngest son, Barron, who's been such a good sport through all of this, thank you, buddy," Trump said warmly. The room erupted in polite applause, but it was clear that few expected Barron to respond. After all, he was just a 10-year-old boy, quiet and shy in public settings. But to everyone's astonishment, Barron stood up. His father looked surprised but stepped back, giving Barron the floor. The room fell into a stunned silence as all eyes turned to the young boy who now stood before them. Barron adjusted the lapels of his blazer, his face serious. Then, in a clear and steady voice, he began to speak. "Thank you, Dad. And thank you, everyone, for being here today." He paused, looking around the room with a maturity far beyond his years. "I know this is supposed to be a day to celebrate my father and all that he's accomplished. But I want to talk about something else, about what I've learned from watching all of this happen." The audience leaned in, captivated. "When my dad decided to run for president, a lot of people said it couldn't be done," Barron continued. "They said he wasn't the kind of person who should be in politics. But he didn't let that stop him. He believed in himself, and he worked hard to get here." His voice grew steadier, more impassioned. "And what I've learned from that is something I think everyone here can take away: you don't have to be what other people expect you to be. You just have to believe in what you're doing and do it with all your heart." The room was utterly silent. Even seasoned politicians, who had spent decades perfecting their public personas, seemed struck by the raw sincerity of Barron's words. But Barron wasn't finished. He took a deep breath, his youthful face resolute. "There's another thing I want to say. This country is really divided right now. I've seen it in the news, I've heard people talk about it, and I've felt it when I'm out in public. But I think we can do better. I think we have to do better. We have to listen to each other, even when we don't agree. That's the only way we can make things better for everyone." A ripple of emotion swept through the room. Some people blinked back tears. Others nodded in silent agreement. Barron looked toward his father, who was watching him with an expression of pride and perhaps a touch of surprise. "Dad," Barron said, his voice softening, "I know you have a big job ahead of you. But I believe in you. And I think if we all work together, we can do something really amazing." With that, Barron sat down. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the room erupted in applause, louder and more heartfelt than anything that had come before. It wasn't the polite clapping of politicians checking their watches, it was genuine, the kind of applause that comes from being truly moved. The video of Barron's unexpected speech quickly went viral. Within hours, social media was flooded with posts praising his maturity, kindness, and insight. Hashtags like #Barron Trump speech and #future leader trended worldwide. But for Barron, the moment wasn't about going viral or making headlines. It was about speaking from the heart and saying what he believed needed to be said. Years later, many would still talk about that day, not just as the inauguration of the 45th president, but as the moment a young boy reminded the world of the power of sincerity, hope, and unity.